Hello, thank you for viewing.
I will be discussing the ethical of downloading digital copies of products already owned by the downloader. I have determined that the appropriate standard to apply in testing the ethicality of this issue is Rossian duty-based ethics, a model outlined by 20th century philosopher W.D. Ross. This standard takes into consideration what are termed prima facie duties, and the judgment of the ethical nature, whether deemed ethical or unethical, is summarized in the following quote from Ross's work, The Right and the Good. The ground of the actual rightness of the act is that, of all acts possible in the circumstances, it is that whose prima facie rightness in the respects in which it is prima facie right most outweighs its prima facie wrongness in any respects in which it is prima facie wrong. So let's take a look at the individual prima facie duties applicable in this context, which are justice, reparation, gratitude, and non-maleficence. The first prima facie duty to be analyzed is justice. From a legal perspective, there is absolutely no disputing that piracy of any product is wrong, regardless of the circumstances. This is made clear by the FBI anti-piracy warning seals that are affixed to the labels of music compact discs, video games, software, books, and shown prior to the start of movies on DVD or in the theater. In the event that the perpetrator has been found to be guilty of piracy, which can easily be determined by the tracking of their downloading activity by their internet service provider, the fact that they had earlier purchased a physical copy of that item is not a valid defense in the eyes of the law. However, ethicality is never strictly subject to the legality of the issue, and analyzing the justness of this situation from a personal perspective, or in other words, what the downloader deems to be fair, obviously yields different results. This perspective is shaped by the particular person's upbringing, along with the way their mindset is shaped by cultural attitude towards intellectual property rights. And with the advent of the World Wide Web in this generation, we have seen a paradigm shift in respect to these rights that has made violating them seemingly more acceptable. The next prima facie duty to be analyzed is reparation. Without truly considering the implications of pirating multimedia products that the downloader had already purchased once, it is easy to assume that nobody is losing out as a result. However, delving deeper into the issue, it is clear that this is not the case. For one, this practice can result in the downloader acquiring an upgrade. For example, one can try to justify pirating a high-definition rip of a movie by years ago having purchased a VHS of that film. While the underlying content remains the same, the downloader is ultimately rewarded with a higher quality version of the film than the original they own. Or somebody may own a paperback copy of a book and download an ebook version of the same title that includes enhanced features such as video and interactive features. Although the intention of the downloader may be to create a backup, in these situations they are also appropriating themselves additional benefits that could have possibly enticed them to purchase those upgraded versions. The result is that book publishers, movie studios, software engineers, musicians, and the like, although having profited from their original work, are being denied additional revenue that they are entitled to. Likewise, workers involved in the translation of the original multimedia into digital form will suffer from their efforts being taken for granted and not compensated. When one is not involved in the creation of a product, it isn't likely that they will recognize a multifaceted effort by many different workers needed to finally get that product out into the hands of the public. This extends to workers who turn the book into an ebook, a film to Blu-ray disc, an album to HD CD format, or preparing software for production, to name a few. Workers who are not involved with the creation of the actual underlying content, but whose livelihoods still depend on this work. There are also unintended consequences to take into consideration when it comes to the downloader securing themselves a digital copy. If a naive downloader is using BitTorrent technology to acquire this copy, they could be unknowingly and unintentionally distributing segments of the data to other downloaders whose intentions are simply to steal the product without having to pay for it, rather than creating a backup for themselves. As a downloader goes about retrieving the BitTorrent, They are simultaneously facilitating access of the digital copy to these more malevolent parties by acting as a server in this peer-to-peer hybrid technology. The result, although unintentional, is an unquantifiable loss of income for the author, musician, production studios, etc. The longer they continue to seed the file out to others, the loss of income for these parties grows at an exponential rate, as leechers who they have mistakenly given access of the file to turn around and become seeders themselves. In regards to the prima facie duty of gratitude, this can be looked at from two perspectives. From the downloader or beneficiary's perspective, they can argue that their original purchase displays their appreciation of the artist's crafts and for the particular work that they produced. Whether genuine or as justification for an act they know at their core to be wrong, they may argue that repeated purchases of what is basically the same work or piece of art may not be necessary to show the artist's gratitude for their labors. From the perspective of the artist responsible for the creation, gratitude for their labors may be demonstrated by purchasing their work in every format the downloader desires. A digital copy of a product may not offer the same value as a physical copy, but it provides a person with the luxury of accessing these works that they value all from one location. A collection of music albums stored on a hard drive, or say, a collection of novels stored on a Kindle. And although the digital copy may truly be acquired to serve as a backup in case the original is lost, the intention cannot be known by the artist. From their point of view, if the work is good enough to own in multiple incarnations, it should be worth paying for in each of those incarnations. Finally, the prima facie duty of non-maleficence, or restraint from causing harm, is considered. This duty is violated by the act of piracy in a number of ways. As outlined earlier, the unintended consequences of acquisition through the use of BitTorrents causes financial harm to all involved in the production of the work, while workers involved in the translation of the work to digital format are ultimately harmed financially through any illegal acquisition of the product, whether it be as a result of loss of income from a royalty-based payment system, or more abstractly in the long run, of loss of work opportunities due to trends of meager sales resulting from piracy. Moreover, the act of piracy for any reason ultimately contributes to furthering a mindset we've come to adapt in the digital age that treats it like a victimless act. From the creation of Napster onwards, this seems to be a progressing and perpetuating trend. Drawing parallels to creating copies of works in other formats may lend some credence to the attitude of the person committing the act of piracy when they already have the original work available to them in some format. For instance, the acts of recording movies or television shows that are broadcast on cable, onto VHS or DVR or TiVo, or recording music that plays on the radio to tape cassette, or backing up copies of software or computer games to disk all result in newfound or additional ownership of works of art. Yet these are all generally accepted practices. However, downloading digital versions of these products from the internet is a practice that is frowned upon. Although there is a distinction that the generally accepted acts do not allow for an upgrade in quality over the original, both forms of the act yield basically the same result. When drawing parallels outside of the world of multimedia, it becomes clear that the question of ethicality could not even be considered if not for the technology which makes it possible. Let's say, for instance, that we wanted to figuratively back up our wardrobe. Obviously, this is not possible because we don't have the means to. If we were to lose a shirt or a hat from our wardrobe, we would simply have no option but to go out and purchase another one, unless, of course, we decide to commit theft and run the risk of arrest. Such a threat does not seem nearly as threatening or possible, although it is, when it comes to dealing with the internet. Just because we have methods at our disposal that allow us to easily retrieve files and back them up doesn't mean that this protection is a right that we are afforded and can use whenever the technology can be applied. Taking into consideration the prima facie duties of justice, reparation, gratitude, and non-maleficence, as well as drawing real-world parallels, I have determined the act of pirating a digital copy of a product once purchased and already owned by the downloader to weigh more on the side of prima facie wrongness, and ultimately deem it to be an unethical act.